Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Boho Jewel. Today I wanted to show you what I've been playing with this past week, and it's alcohol inks on these cute wooden earring pieces. So when I looked it up on Amazon, I just came across them, and they're just kind of described in earring findings, but it's this nice sort of thin, really lightweight pale wood. So I thought it would be perfect to play around with alcohol inks, and you can kind of see some of these pieces are already glazed on one side or the other. But I wanted to do a little quick tutorial to show you how the inks react to these and give you a few tips on them. So one thing to keep in mind for sure anytime you're doing anything with alcohol inks is that it is not an exact science. So you can definitely create some different sort of patterns or likenesses in the pieces, but it's definitely not something to stress over because the inks can be really unpredictable. This is a perfect example. So you can see on these, I got basically on one side kind of the pattern that I was looking for. So I wanted to create something sort of cohesive, and when I did the same thing on the other side, this is what happened. So don't stress about it too bad. I feel like especially for the earrings, you're really only going to see one side or the other more. So you could just either keep the backs of your earrings blank, or even if you're doing this as a necklace or, you know, some kind of pendant, or you could just do one color of an alcohol ink, or you could just paint it, like paint it black or white or whatever color you choose. Now, another thing that I learned from this is to make sure you're keeping your work surface very clean, because these little splooches right here, it's getting a little blurry. So this was, it actually looked really good on both sides. And then when I flipped it over, everything was dry, everything was great. When I flipped it over, I ended up placing this on a dirty work surface that still had some wet ink on it. So that's what happened there. So there's tip number one. The other thing I discovered that I played around with is once you get one side of your piece done, go ahead and glaze it. And I like to use the Americana triple thick glaze. So that works really well. It makes it really shiny, as you can see. And it kind of helps to prevent a little bit of that bleed over from the other side. But the inks are they're inks, they're fluid, right? So they're gonna seep over into the edges here and on the inside a little bit, and you may still get a little run over on this side. But it definitely, I do feel like putting that glaze on there first did help kind of prevent too much bleeding over from the other side. So this is kind of a snapshot of what I've been playing with so far this week. And part of the reason we are down here at my kitchen table rather than the white work surface you're used to seeing is because I definitely want you guys to know the importance of keeping something to work on when you're working with your inks. Because this right here, let me move it over, is one example of where my daughter and I were playing with inks on paper last year, and this was kind of a flow over. You can see it on the other side of the table as well. You see all our stuff. So it is not coming off of anywhere. It does not like to come off. So what I have been working with is this towel. It's just an old towel that, you know, used for like cleaning up messes, the old towels you don't really use for your bath anymore, because I don't like to use too much paper products, like to kind of conserve for the environment. So just an old towel, and it's doubled over because you can see the inks still bleed through even using that. If you are using paper towels, you definitely need to get several layers because the inks will bleed through. And I've just been placing my pieces on there. The other thing I've been using are these reusable gloves. And I get these at Sally's for hair, for doing hair, because I am a hairstylist. But I just keep a pair now for crafty things. So these, they're so comfortable. They don't feel like they get in your way. And you can just wash them off and use them like forever, you guys. So rather than using disposable gloves. So I'm going to set up and be right back. Okay, so I've got what I'm going to share with you in front of me now. I've got my gloves on, and I have been using, what are they? They are the Ranger alcohol inks, which I really like. I just bought a kit about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, and so it's what I'm familiar with. I like the colors. I'm happy with it. We're good to go. So the first technique I want to show you that I was using with this is the same thing you can do on paper to create sort of that marbled sort of, I don't know, just kind of a nice Monet style effect. So to get this, you get one of these little Velcro sticky pads, which also came in the kit that I used, and take a little piece of felt. Now it came with felt. This I ran out, so I just cut up some white felt from the fabric store to fit that size, and we're good to go. So I'm going to use some of this Sunshine Yellow and just drip several drops on here, just sort of randomly. And I like to keep my lids with the bottles, even if I don't tighten them up completely all the way, just because I have had it happen where, you know, if you're using a darker color and then it mixes with a lighter color, you could end up with like green, for example, since we're using this. This is Stream, the color Stream, which is a cute teal color, and this is Wild Plum. And again, I'm just putting these sort of all over, random dots. You don't need to do too many. You don't want it to become a blur or get kind of muddy looking. And then this is the mixative, and the mixative you have to shake. So you hear that little ball in there. So the mixative is thicker, and it produces a different effect. It doesn't run the same way that the alcohol inks do. And when you're using it on paper, you can definitely tell, but I'll show you on one of these pieces kind of the difference with it as well. And you can get these in lots of colors too. This is gold, and I'm only going to put just a couple of drops of this. 1, 2, 3. Don't know why I like to sing some words, but I do. And this is the alcohol blending solution. Now, one thing on this is not just straight up rubbing alcohol like you would use in your cabinet. This has several different ingredients in it. Alcohol itself is not going to work the same way. I experimented and tried, so I'm going to put several drops of this, kind of squeeze that throughout. The alcohol does not blend the inks the same way. It doesn't move them around the same way. It actually doesn't do much of anything. So you definitely want that specific solution. Sorry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and stamp it on my piece. And just overlap and kind of see that little bit on there. You wouldn't think it would do a lot, but you just kind of work it around and create that really pretty blended effect. How fun is that? Look at that. So that gives you that sort of blended, sort of very natural, very easy to do, almost like you dotted all those little dots on there yourself. Very pointillistic. That's the word I was looking for. So, all right, so now I'm going to show you on this one, just if you're using the inks in a different sort of way. I guess I'll stick with the same colors just so you guys can get kind of an idea of how they work. So one thing that I do like is that you can see the wood grain. So as you're doing that, let me see if I can move the camera just a little closer. That would probably help. There we go. So you'll see the wood grain come out, and I do try when I'm doing the earrings to create sort of some sense of things being the same on each side, but this is where I'm telling you the inks are unpredictable. And especially on wood grain, because obviously it's going to be a little different on each one because it's an organic material. And then I'm just going to drop some of that yellow, a little more here. And you can see where it starts to blend with the other ink that's already there. So anytime you're using alcohol inks, I feel like it's a really great exercise in letting go. Oh, look at that. How fun is that? And you can just see how the inks, when they blend with each other, sort of bloom out and mix with the other colors. Love it. And as you let it sit, it just continues to sort of work with each other. So I'm going to use a little of this fixative so you can see that's turning out really pretty right there. I'm really enjoying that. Boop. So you see how the fixative, let me put a little on this side. So you can see how that fixative, it doesn't blend out exactly the same way. It's moving a little bit now because I'm moving the piece as well. But it stays a little more solid. Well, that's really pretty. It's almost like a gemstone. And you can wiggle the pieces around. I mean, feel free to experiment. So now, let's see which color. I'm going to do a couple more drops of this. And then actually drop some ink on top of that so you can see what happens. But you can see, you guys, I think this is an excellent exercise if you're a big control freak or if you are trying to expand your personal art, I don't know, vocabulary or talents, and you tend to be someone who's very, very structured, this would be a great way to kind of loosen up. I always found it interesting. I never had issues with anything like this where it was very intuitive, but I always struggled with structure. So that was my challenge to myself in art school especially. So I think doing something like this where there's not a lot of risk involved, you know, just playing around with inks on paper even, can be a great lesson in just sort of relaxing and letting the medium do its work, which I think can all translate into other medium as well. So you kind of see how when we put it on top, I'm going to put it right in the middle of this one. So you see how it doesn't necessarily blend the same way. It's doing some really cool things. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera. You see how it almost fizzles up a little bit. So it tends to, when you work it in the mixative, it kind of gives it a different texture, which I think is fun. So there we go. All right, and I'm gonna add, yeah, can you, oh gosh, can you guys see that on that one? How it's just sort of, it's like it fizzles. It's like it's just doing fun things. All right, so now I'm gonna show you the alcohol blending solution on this. I'm just gonna do a couple of drops. So you see how that then, the alcohol blending solution starts to push things away a little bit, and it does start to blend things in a different way. And so this is where you just sort of let the inks do what they do. How pretty is that? I love it. There's something very flowery about this one to me. I don't know why. All right, so there is that example. I'm going to carefully set these over here. Okay, and then I'm going to show you kind of what I did with this one right here. We'll see if it does a similar thing, if it would like to. And I'm actually going to use a different fixative. I'm going to use the rose gold fixative this time. Move that up a bit, you guys, gently over here. So what I did to create these effects, and the same thing with these little triangular ones right here, I started it at the bottom and worked up. So the fixatives, I almost want to say feel like they have a little bit more of a paint-like quality just because they feel a little thicker, just a tiny bit thicker than the inks, but they are very runny as well. So I'm just going to create as much uniformity down there as I can. And then let's see, let's try this really pretty cranberry. So I'm going to use this cranberry color, and I am just going to drip this from the top actually. And you see how it runs so far down, just the one little drop. So another bit of advice that I would give is just to take it slow with these. I'm actually moving a little faster than normal simply because it is a video and I don't want you guys to get bored. But see, here's a perfect example, especially with the wood grain. Like, see how far those two drops came versus this. So just try to relax into it and don't stress about it. And I think I'm actually going to use this latte. We'll see how this works out. This is sort of a brownish color. So to me, it has a bit of a yellow-green tint to it. If you're like me and you're all about over-analyzing colors, that'll make sense. So we'll put a bit of that on there. Let's see. And then I'm going to do a bit of this red, and this is red pepper. So you see how when it comes down to meet the fixative, how it sort of pulls the fixative up. So I'm going to put a drop right there, right at the edge of it. And you see how it's sort of, to me, it's almost got like a little bit of sizzle, and it sizzles up to meet the inks. So that is that, and I'm going to use just a little bit of the alcohol blending solution, but I'm going to put it at the bottom because that's going to move all that up. And then I let it work its magic. So that is what I have been doing with this stuff, you guys. And now here's one last thing I'm going to talk about for this aspect of it. I'm going to do a couple other videos on how to finish these. Make sure your inks are dry, completely dry on one side, definitely before you flip your piece over. And it doesn't take too long for them to dry. This one's already dry. Get these gloves off, they're getting kind of warm. So this one is already dry, so we're good to go. Okay, so I could flip it over. Oh, well, that side's already done, but I could flip it over, work on the other side, or like I said, I would suggest doing, now if you're dealing with an organic piece like this, or even this, where it's really okay if it bleeds over to the other side, I wouldn't stress about it. But if you're trying to do something more like this, then I would definitely glaze it first, and I will do a video on that. I will also link all of the things that I have used. There we go. I wanted to lift you guys up a little bit. All of the things I used, the wooden pieces, all of these wooden pieces you saw, they came in this little box that I ordered from Amazon, and it did come with some finishings to create the earrings, to do the loops and the ear wires. Like I said, I've been using the Ranger inks, and I will link what I've been using in the description below, as well as the Americana Triple Thick Glaze, but I'm going to do another video to show you guys how to work with that. So hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you plan on playing with this, or if you've been doing something similar to this, and if you have any tips that maybe I missed. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.